Hello, friends. I'm Chris. I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness, and I wanted to deliver a Dharma talk to you on the three gunas. This has come up in my year-long Ayurvedic health coaching program, Next Level Human. There was a reference to this part of the curricula. So I've given a brief Dharma talk to members who are in that program, to folks who are in our community with us. But I also think this bears sharing with a broader audience. That the Vedic teaching of the three gunas, from my perspective, is really foundational to yoga and Ayurveda. And outside of teacher trainings, I don't hear it being talked about a lot, and I don't hear the language of the gunas being used a lot. And it's not wrong, but it is kind of a shame, right? What you're going to find about the gunas is you already think about your life in that way. But if you're like me, then a deeper understanding of these three universal characteristics or energies will deepen your understanding of many parts of yourself, your humanity, and your life. Right. So to that end, let me tell you a story from my yoga practice. Probably 3 or 4 years into my consistent yoga practice, I was in my home community and I was taking a class with a teacher who has a reputation for delivering a very vigorous practice, facilitating a very vigorous practice. But also, like, she has a real gift for being able to see when one of her students has room to go deeper into something. So there were lots of times where I felt like I was giving my all in one direction or the other. This teacher cued me to give a little bit more or to give in a little bit different way. And she was always right. I always had the space and I always had the capacity to do that. So I was taking a class with this teacher, and one day she was walking around, she was giving hands-on assists, and she was giving feedback in the poses. We're in Warrior One, which, if you're not familiar with this, is a closed hip standing pose, right? And we were doing a variation where the arms were reaching out over our heads. And I wasn't paying any attention to the person next to me, but this teacher told this person, she said, flex your hands more, bring your hands to life. And so the person next to me flexed her hands. My hands were super flexed. So I thought it was good. And this teacher came by to me and she said, Chris, soften your hands a little bit. I want them flexed, but not that much. And if I'm honest, in that moment, what I thought was, for the love of God, what do you want from me? You want them flexed, but not flexed too much? What am I supposed to do with that feedback? I didn't understand at that time that she was talking about the gunas. So let's try this as an experiment. Bring your forearms in front of your body. Have your hands soft, lazy, low energy in your hands. All right, now I want you to add energy, but add energy to the point where your hands are over flexed. Flex them enough that the muscles in your hands, your wrists, your forearms quickly start to fatigue. Good. Okay, now bookmark both of those, both the soft, what one of my teachers would call dead fish hands, the overflexed hands. Book that experience in your mind. And then find a state that's in the middle, where the hands are alive, active, engaged, but not overflexed. So this will be a sustainable level of life that you've got and energy that you have in your hands. You could do this for the next hour quite easily. Right? Bookmark that in your mind too. We're going to come back to that. Great job, friends. All right, so this talk again is going to be on the three universal characteristics or energies. In Sanskrit, these are known as gunas. Right, so again, I think of these as three universal qualities. My Ayurveda and business teacher, Kate, refers to these as three energies. I think that's also a useful way of looking at them. The thing about this is we can apply these if we're thoughtful. We can apply the gunas to our whole humanity and to almost every aspect of our lives. So first, let me orient you to the universal law of polarity. And this is an idea that like increases like and opposites reduce each other. Like increases like and opposites reduce each other. This teaching comes up over and over again in Ayurveda, but you've seen this in your life too. You just don't necessarily have the vocabulary to describe it, right? So one example is I've suffered under a sweet tooth for much of my life. And I've just over the last year or so kind of figured out how to get that under control. There are a couple of tools that really help me with that, right? But one thing that I noticed a long time ago, I read this article in Men's Health that said, if you are struggling with a sweet tooth, eat a pickle. So I thought, well, that's really weird. But then there was a day I was struggling with a sweet tooth. I ate a pickle and the sweet tooth stopped. It stopped. It went away. Right. So this is just an article in this pop magazine. There's no explanation of why. Ayurveda explains that. So when you get to the teaching of the six tastes, you find out that sour reduces sweet. So like increases like, opposites reduce each other. Here's another example. So I don't know what your experience with sweets is, but I'm going to use sweets again as an example. If I don't eat a cookie today, I don't want a cookie tomorrow. But if I eat one cookie today, I want 5 cookies tomorrow. Like increases like, and opposites reduce each other. So this comes up over and over again in Ayurveda, right? We're going to come back to this. We're going to tie this back in. And this brings us to the three gunas. So in the Bhagavad Gita, our protagonist, the royal warrior of the Pandava clan, Arjuna, is facing this ethical dilemma. And he is counseled throughout this epic poem by his teacher and mentor, Krishna, right? And so Krishna introduces and describes these 3 universal energies or gunas to Arjuna. So the gunas, again, I mentioned this before, they can be applied to all of nature and all of our nature. Now, I'm going to tell you in a few moments that one of the gunas is the goal for our lives, is what we're shooting for, right? So it would be very easy to try to apply some value to them. So for example, if I tell you that the goal of our lives is a balanced level of energy, or sattva, or a sattvic energy, and rajas and tamas are states other than this, it would be really easy to come up with the idea that sattva is good and rajas and tamas are bad. But I think that's an oversimplification. I actually think all 3 gunas are tools that we can use to apply to various points in our life. So let's start with tamas. So tamas in terms of energy would be considered very low energy. So if you remember our hands, what one of my teachers would call dead fish hands, right? That's tamas. So this is a state of inertia. With inertia, the trouble with inertia is it's hard to get it moving, right? It also can mean dullness, it can mean dormancy, it can mean ignorance, right? Now, something that has a quality of tomas, so the hands like this that have the quality of tomas, we could describe these as being tomasic hands, tomasic hands. So tomas by nature is heavy and dense. And it can be, especially if we continue to add tamas to it, immobilizing, and it can induce slothfulness. So back to our universal law of polarity, like increases like. So if we have tamas and we respond to it and apply more tamas to it, it's going to put us in a more tamasic state. Right? This will make more sense, friends, as we go through this. Right. The second state is rajas. So think about those hands where they were flexed but overflexed, and maybe find that shape with your hands again, so that the fingers are really quickly starting to fatigue. The muscles in your fingers, your hands, wrists, even the forearms are quickly starting to fatigue. So in terms of energy, we would say that rajas is very high energy, and something with the quality of rajas, like these hands right now, those are rajasic in nature. Okay, you can relax your hands. So on the positive side, when we apply this as a tool in our life, rajas can be vibrant. It can mean activity, passion, movement is rajasic in nature. But in its extreme, at its worst, it's agitation. So an overactive mind, we could say, is rajasic in nature, right? So on the plus side, rajas motivates us to take action and to assert ourselves. But it's usually characterized as unsteady, agitated, and unhappy. And if you take that shape with your hands again, like right away, within seconds, this is not sustainable, right? So one of the challenges is we live in a world that really, in lots of ways, pushes us into a rajasic state. So we have cell phones, email, drive-through restaurants, ATM machines, everything is instantaneous. And like we live in a society where exhaustion is a status symbol, right? So we're encouraged to push, push, push. where primacy of work above all other things in our lives, in our Western society, in the United States, that's the case for sure, right? So it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So high energy in the Rajas. And that brings us to the middle, right? So if you remember that state of the hands in the middle, so they're not dead fish hands, they're not, or tamasic, they're not overflexed, unsustainable hands or rajasic. They have a balanced level of energy in these hands, right? This is sattva. This is the state of sattva. So our hands in this state, we would say, are sattvic, right? So sattva in terms of energy is a balanced energy. So this is luminosity, it's purity, it's harmony and lightness. Sattva is considered to be a pain-free state. So where we don't have to do, we just have to be. There's nothing particular to do. There's nowhere particularly to go. There's no desire to particularly do anything. And in the Vedic teachings, it's thought that sattva leads to a harmonious life. It leads to well-being, and it leads to equanimity, right? So this is from the Vedic perspective, but we've seen this in other areas. So if you remember, like I grew up to the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? Which you didn't know it. Nobody told you at the time, but this is a story about sattva. So bear with me on this. So in this story, there's this forest miscreant. Her name is Goldilocks. So she's walking around through the forest, and she's breaking into people's homes, right? But she goes into this house that's owned by three bears, and she gets all up in their business. She sits in the chairs. She tastes their oatmeal. She lays down in their beds. Now, in the story, the metaphor of Papa Bear is Rajas. It's Rajas, it's high energy. And all of Papa Bear's belongings are Rajasic in nature. So if you remember, Papa Bear's chair was too firm. His oatmeal was too hot. His bed was way too firm. Right, so Goldilocks moves on to the metaphor of baby bear. And baby bear, the metaphor of baby bear is tamas, is low energy. And all of baby bear's stuff was tamasic. So baby bear's chair was too soft. Baby bear's oatmeal was too cold. Baby bear's bed was way too soft. But it was only through the metaphor of mama bear that Goldilocks found that balanced energetic quality of sattva. All of mama bear's belongings were sattvic in nature. Her chair was just the right amount of firmness. Her oatmeal was just the right temperature. Her bed was just the right balance between firmness and softness. So mama bear was sattvic, right? And the Buddhist spiritual tradition, Siddhartha Gautama, the historical Buddha, described Buddhism as the middle path, right? So Siddhartha had experienced a whole range of human existence. He was born into royalty. He was a prince. He was wealthy. He had plenty to eat. He was protected from any harm. That wasn't good for him. You know, once he discovered that his family was hiding much of the world's suffering to try to protect him, he left that environment and it became an ascetic. So he abandoned his clothing, he abandoned food, and he lived a life of great hardship. That was no good. Although he grew from both of those experiences, neither one of those two extremes was good for him. So it was through the middle path of Buddhism that Siddhartha sat under the Bodhi tree and found an awakened existence. In contemporary society, we use expressions like moderation in all things. Like if somebody's talking about, perhaps they have a question about whether they drink too much, or they eat too much, or they eat too much of certain things like sweets and things like that. The contemporary advice that people give, moderation in all things. This is a reference to the gunas. Or we have language around things like not too much, not too little, sattva. Social scientist Michael Pollan has this quote about food that I love. He says, eat food, mostly plants, not too much, sattva. Yoga is filled with language about sattva. So I told you the story about the yoga teacher, saw the tamasic hands in the client and said, flex your fingers. It's a call to go from tamas to sattva. Or she saw my overflex hands and she said, soften your fingers a little bit. A call to go from rajas, add tamas to get to sattva, right? But lots of other language. So if you've taken a yoga class and you've heard a teacher say things like, press the pinky edge blade of your right foot more firmly down into the earth. That's a call to add rajas to a fairly tamasic state and bring it into balance as sattva, right? Or you might hear something like, soften the quality of your gaze, soften the flesh around your eyes. You might hear, Visualize ice cubes melting. Let your shoulder blades melt down your back. These are both calls recognizing a rajasic state, adding tamas to bring them into sattva. So it's all gunas. Right. So I've already mentioned this, but the goal for our lives and for our humanity is to live in this balanced sattvic state. So while sattva is the goal, and I know I'm repeating myself, I started with this idea that doesn't make rajas and tamas inherently bad. Go back to our universal law of polarity. Like increases like, opposites reduce each other. So when we find ourselves in a tamasic state where there's too much tamas, we can add rajas to bring ourselves into balance. So an example of this might be to get ourselves up first thing in the morning, having a good breath body practice, like starting with 20 minutes of movement coordinated with the breath. Maybe we do 15 or 20 sun salutations. We are adding a bit of rajas to a tamasic state to bring it into balance, to bring it to sattva. Same thing at the end of the day, right? We come home from a demanding job. We're all geared up, making dinner for the family, washing dishes, getting meals made and prepared for the following day. Rajas, rajas, rajas. Maybe a gentle, nice, slow evening walk holding hands with a loved one. Maybe that's we pour a warm bath for ourselves. Maybe it's that we meditate, or we do some down regulating breath work, right? So these are all going from a rajasic state, adding a bit of tamas in order to bring it into a balanced sattvic state. Right. So how do we apply an understanding of the gunas to your practice, whatever your physical practice is, or whatever your spiritual practice is, and to your life? Well, I've already mentioned you can apply the gunas to your yoga practice for sure, but you can also apply it to any fitness routine. You can apply the gunas to your diet, right? If you think about like what's a high energy food, one of the ways that I think about this is if you eat a really rajasic food, a food that's really high energy, if you eat it now and then you work out an hour from now, you're going to feel it, right? It's good that food is going to come back and talk to you. So think about things like ginger, garlic, onions, hot peppers, all rajasic. So the same thing like tamas, low energy foods like increases like will make you feel lower. So things like, have you ever noticed in the evening if you eat ice cream, blood sugar drops and you don't feel so good afterwards? Or like in Ayurveda, we're really discouraged from eating leftovers. It's not that there's anything inherently wrong with leftovers, but it's the prana, the life force energy that's in the food is gone. After it's been prepared fresh, eaten, cooled, reheated, the life force energy is almost entirely gone. Leftovers are very, very tamasic in nature, so we're discouraged from eating them. You can apply the gunas to your morning routine, right? So we wake up in the morning, and most of the time, for most of us, we wake up in a very tamasic state. How do we balance that out, right? How do we do it in wholesome ways, and how do we do it in not so wholesome ways? Not so wholesome ways might be drinking too much coffee, right? Coffee is rajasic. We're adding rajas to the tamas to bring us into a balanced state. But I would argue that I'm not anti-caffeine and I'm not necessarily anti-coffee, but I'm anti me being addicted to things, and coffee has this sort of addictive tendency for me. So I think there's some other tools like breath work that we can add to your day, and add to your morning routine to bring you into balance. But coffee is a good example of a rajas we add to that tamasic state in which we awake to bring us into balance. So think about how you can apply an understanding of the gunas to the ebbs and flows of your life, right? We are cyclical creatures. We live cyclical lives, and there are ebbs and flows, right? And so sometimes when we're in the flow and we're at the top of the peak, we need to bring ourselves down a little bit. And when things start to ebb up a little bit, we need to bring ourselves back up. The gunas are a tool that you can use to be more conscious in how you're doing that. So that is a Dharma talk on the three universal qualities or energies, the gunas. Again, my name is Chris Bishop, and I'm from Transformation Nation Yoga and Wellness, and I hope to see you on your mat soon. I wanted to take just a moment to tell you about our 12-month Ayurvedic health coaching program. We call this Next Level Human. So in Next Level Human, we spend a year guiding a group of members through these transformative habits of the ancient yogis. Now, the habits themselves are pretty simple, but it's a holistic program. It includes nutrition, it includes meditation, it includes breath work, it includes movement, it includes creating more space in our calendars and in our lives so that we can live an easeful life. This program is a results-based program, and the reason that I'm so confident that we're able to deliver results, and the reason that we're seeing that with our members right now, is because the habits themselves are fairly simple, but difficult to automate on our own. So what we do in Next Level Human is we use the best available social science on human habit evolution, and we lean into the power of a dynamic group where our members are we're all shooting at the same target. We support each other, lift each other up when we need to. We also are accounting to one another. So it's a powerful, transformative program. We also supplement the Ayurvedic health coaching program with high quality yoga, meditation, and breath work. So if you'd like to get more information on this, you could reach out to me through email, chris@transformationnationyogaandwellness.com. You could call or text me at 281-728-3896. That's a US number. Or you could reach out to me through social media. Now, I am on Facebook, but let's be honest, Chris Bishops are a dime a dozen. There's a lot of us, and it might be harder to find me that way. If you look through Instagram, check out at Chris Bishop Yoga and at Transformation Nation Yoga. But I hope this Dharma talk has been helpful to you, and looking forward to hearing from you soon. Have an amazing day.